Okay, welcome to the Objective 2 podcast on Westward expansion. I can summarize Manifest Destiny and other reasons why the United States expanded west. So that is the objective that you're going to need to be able to focus on throughout the course of this podcast. Make sure that by the time this is over, you can both explain and summarize Manifest Destiny and give me some other reasons why the United States wanted to expand west. Now, in the middle 1800s, the United States was starting to think about expanding further to the west past the Louisiana Territory that they already held. Past the Louisiana Territory lay three key territories. The first of these territories is the one you already learned about in Objective 1, the Republic of Texas. The Republic of Texas was its own independent nation after winning its Revolutionary War against Mexico and becoming its own country. The United States Congress was debating whether or not to add Texas because there was a lot of concern over whether Texas would be a slave state or a free state, and those two sides were arguing about that in Congress. Congress was also concerned that adding Texas might start a war with Mexico, who still considered Texas to be a part of their country. So they were pretty sure that Texas was going to, at some point, become a part of the United States. They just weren't sure when or how that was going to happen yet. The next one of these territories is the territory of Oregon Country. This is the land to the northwest of the Louisiana Territory and bordered the Pacific Ocean. It was the territory that Lewis and Clark explored right after they crossed the Rocky Mountains with the help of Sacagawea. Today it includes Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and then parts of Wyoming, Montana, and even western Canada. The first white Americans or even Europeans to settle permanently in Oregon Country were missionaries. These were people who were there to spread their Christian religion. They would build missions or churches as an effort to spread their religion to the Native Americans and the mountain men who were living there. And the missionaries are followed later by thousands of other people attracted to that territory by the fur trade, and they catch what becomes known as Oregon fever. Oregon fever is not an actual disease. It's a sort of urban legend or a myth that spreads about all this great farmland in Oregon Country with wheat that grows taller than a man. Now, there was some really good farmland in Oregon Country, but not all of it is just this luscious farmland with wheat fields growing taller than men. A lot of Oregon Country is made up of Rocky Mountains and is sort of kind of barren and desolate, but there are some really good farmland there too. Oregon fever is more about just this sense of urgency, everybody feeling this big sense of pride, wanting to pack up everything they own and chase the American dream. Pack up, move west, and seek your fortune. The United States government was encouraging people to move out that direction in hopes that more American settlers in Oregon Country would help give the United States government a stronger claim to that territory. Parts of the Oregon Country were very wild and very untamed. Parts of this land were really great farmland, as we kind of talked about, but a lot of it was very barren and dry. Most of the territory was covered by very dense forests and thick mountain ranges as part of the Rocky Mountains, and the United States and Britain had agreed to share this land jointly. Now, at one time, many different countries claimed to own Oregon Country, including Russia, Spain, France, the United States, Great Britain, and Mexico. Most of these countries gave up, however, and by 1818, only Britain and the United States were left, claiming that it was theirs. They had agreed in 1818 to have joint control over the area with Great Britain, but by 1840, the United States was starting to think about having Oregon Country all to themselves. Now, at first, there were very few people living in Oregon Country, just the missionaries that we already talked about, and a few fur trappers and traders that were mainly on their way to the Pacific Ocean so that they could catch a boat and then go trade with China. A few men there who lived off the land were known as mountain men. These men were admired as rugged individualists, people who could kind of live their own course in life. They would often get together and trade at places called rendezvous, a French word meaning get together. The mountain men became famous for helping people cross through the Rocky Mountains on their way out to Oregon Country. It's actually, other than fur trading, it's another way that they were able to make money. Now, besides the Republic of Texas and Oregon Country, there's a third major territory that the United States wanted to control on their own, and that is the New Mexico Territory. The New Mexico Territory was in the southwestern part of what is now the United States, and it was completely controlled by Mexico, who had won their freedom from Spain in 1821. This region included California, which was really what the United States was really after. But it did also include Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and even parts of Colorado. Much of this land is very hot. It's very dry desert. There's a lot of mountains. Parts of it, though, especially parts of California, were covered in very thick grasses. California was full of large ranches with lots of cattle. These ranches were originally started by the missionaries who lived out there and who came from Spain, but they were worked by vaqueros, Mexican and Native American cowhands. People of Mexican or Spanish heritage who lived there were called Californios. The main reason the United States wanted California, however, really didn't have anything to do with farmland. Every year there were more and more Americans moving to California because they were eager to gain control of the seaports in San Francisco and San Diego. This would give the United States seaports on both the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, which would make it easier for them to trade with China, which the United States and China trade was really growing at the time. However, Mexico refused to sell any part of the New Mexico territory, including Texas and California. Now, there were a few different ways that Americans could head to the west, but most of these involved two major trails. These were the Oregon Trail and the Santa Fe Trail. Families planning on heading west would meet every year in Independence, Missouri if they were heading out on the Oregon Trail, or in Franklin, Missouri, which is just west of Columbia, if they were heading out on the Santa Fe Trail heading towards the New Mexico territory. Before they would leave, they would elect leaders to make important decisions along the way, such as which paths to take through the mountains and which toll roads to take, when they needed to stop at Native American villages to trade, things like that. Even though thousands and thousands of Americans traveled on these trails, though, they were very, very dangerous. People would have to float their wagons across flooded rivers. They would have to cross blazing hot plains during the summer. They would have to make sure that they left at the right time of year to avoid the early snowfalls in the winter. You didn't want to get stuck in the Rocky Mountains in the snow. It was very important to leave by May in order to make it to Oregon or to Santa Fe by October. Otherwise, you may get stuck. Disease was also a major, major problem on these trails. It spread very rapidly. People lived very close together in the wagon trains, and obviously they didn't have a lot of access to showers or running water and things like that. So disease was actually the most dangerous part of the trail. Now, even though the United States had specific reasons for wanting each of these territories, they wanted Texas for the farmland, they wanted Oregon country for the farmland, Texas for the cotton, and Oregon for the corn or the wheat fields. They wanted California for the seaports. There was another big reason why the United States wanted to expand west, and that reason was called manifest destiny. It was a very popular idea that was kind of starting to sweep over the entire country because of the newspapers. Manifest destiny is the belief that because of their superior religions, superior democratic values, and their culture, it was clear and obvious destiny of the United States to conquer all of the land to the west and stretch the United States from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. Manifest destiny caused a lot of national pride. Many Americans believed that it was their right to conquer this land. They believed that God had chosen them to do it. It was their job. It was their destiny to spread democracy or to spread the Christian faith. It encouraged expansion, and because of that, a lot of Americans took a lot of pride in it because it was the United States conquering more land. So it was a really popular idea at the time. However, manifest destiny really had a dark side too. Many white Americans believed that they were superior to the Native Americans who had been on the land for thousands of years. They ignored the rights of the British or the Spanish or the Mexican settlers who had already been on that land for hundreds of years before the white Americans began expanding west. They used this belief in manifest destiny to start wars and to take land that did not rightfully belong to them. Even though most Americans believed in manifest destiny, believed that it was their duty and their responsibility to spread their culture, their way of government, their religion, it was causing a lot of debates in Congress at the time because many Northerners were starting to question whether or not slavery should be allowed to expand west. Many people, known as abolitionists, believed that slavery should be outlawed altogether. Now, they were definitely in the minority. There weren't a lot of abolitionists at the time yet, but most everybody in the North didn't want to see slavery expand any more than where it already was. This was leading to a real debate about states' rights and whether or not it's the federal government or the right of the states to decide about questions about slavery. People in the South believed that not only should slavery be allowed, they believed it was necessary. The South was known as a cottonocracy. They had large plantations filled with land, thousands of slaves working in the fields. The North and South argued about whether or not the new states coming in, such as potentially Texas or Oregon or Washington, should they be brought in as slave states or should they be brought in as free states. And they were always afraid to bring in another one because it would upset the balance. And if they ended up with more free states, then all the new states would become free. Or if they ended up with more slave states, then all of the new states would become slave. This led to a lot of debate as they kept expanding west. Now, just to review at the end of Objective 2, after watching this podcast, ask yourself, can I summarize Manifest Destiny and other reasons why the United States wanted to expand west? Do you know all the key vocabulary from your unit sheet? So go back to your unit sheet, take a look at the key vocabulary, and if you don't know it, might want to go back through the podcast and kind of hop around a little bit and make sure you know all the key vocab terms that come out of this. If you're looking for a little extra practice besides what's already on your unit sheet, the best thing you could probably do is try to answer that I can statement, summarize Manifest Destiny and the reasons the U.S. wanted to expand west, and then in your answer, include all of the key vocab terms.